If you listen to the public broadcast volume right now, you would assume sweeping, ironclad rules for artificial intelligence will drop any minute. The media is loudly expecting strict, binding oversight on new frontier models before they are ever released to the public. If we quantify that public discourse, tracking the sheer volume and tone of the coverage, we get what's called a narrative implied probability. And right now, that narrative suggests a roughly 60% likelihood that a massive binding executive order is imminent. But institutional capital is betting against that panic. The financial order book is ignoring the noise. This is a Kalshi prediction market dashboard. Notice the AIREG26 row. That contract resolves on whether the White House issues a formal executive order with strict compute thresholds. While media implied probability sits at 60%, capital prices the event at just 0.42. This graphic illustrates that exact discrepancy. Look at the diverging arrows on the left side of the chart. The difference between the 60% narrative expectation and the 42% market reality creates an 18-point divergence. We call this the mandate gap. The reason for this gap is structural. Public narratives are generated by advocacy coalitions and pundits who pay no financial penalty for being wrong. Capital markets, however, are backed by participants who lose money if their predictions fail. The 0.42 price reflects a system that must integrate the risk of being wrong rather than just the volume of the discourse. That skepticism from the market stems from a missing foundation. The executive branch is currently trying to assert a vast regulatory architecture for AI, but they are attempting to build it without the underlying law required to carry it. The structural reality is legislative non-action. Congress has not passed a frontier AI safety statute with delegated rulemaking authority or civil penalties. That absence isn't an oversight. It's a decision by the 119th Congress not to provide a statutory backbone for these rules. Because Congress hasn't acted, any broad executive branch action strikes an unyielding wall. In administrative law, this barrier is known as the Major Questions Doctrine. It prevents federal agencies from taking actions of vast significance unless Congress has explicitly authorized them to do so. Recent Supreme Court rulings have reinforced this barrier. Without that empty congressional authorization pathway filled, an executive order restricting private AI models cannot move forward. If the executive branch tries to impose a binding gate on private commercial AI release anyway, it will face immediate and likely fatal judicial challenge under these doctrines. The 0.42 print aligns with the legal threshold created by these doctrines. By pricing the contract well below the narrative expectation, the market is integrating the high probability that a broad order would be stayed or struck down by the courts before it could ever resolve. So if the executive branch cannot broadly regulate private AI releases, we have to look at what authority they actually hold. The operational reality lives within the Office of Management and Budget. Their actual power rests in framework guidance and procurement limits. That means the government can set strict conditions on what software federal agencies purchase, but not on what private companies build. Unlike the rigid barrier of the Major Questions Doctrine, procurement power is a tunable variable. The administration can dial federal purchasing requirements up or down as much as they want, and it smoothly adjusts without triggering any friction from the courts. This mechanical difference explains the Kalshi order book. The market prices what is operationally near and within the government's actual legal reach. Capital is ignoring the advocacy predicting sweeping bans because a broad mandate is structurally difficult to achieve without Congress. Instead, the smart money prices the available reality, federal procurement limits. This brings us back to the infographic charting the mandate gap. That 18-point divergence between narrative and capital is a temporary anomaly. Eventually, the illusion has to collapse into the structural reality. We track this resolution right here on the Kalshi board. In Path A, the administration issues a narrowly drawn executive order with specific compute thresholds that survives judicial scrutiny. Under these conditions, that 0.42 price will quickly surge toward 0.85, right before resolution, as the order book corrects upward. Path B is the opposite. The resolution window passes, the government issues nothing but voluntary frameworks, and the narrative price finally collapses downward toward 0.10. You can track the exact breakpoint yourself. Watch the AIREG26 contract. If it crosses 0.55 on the upside, that confirms path A is materializing. If it drops through 0.30 on the downside, path B is locked in. AI governance won't be decided by public panic or media cycles. If you want to know which way the wind is actually blowing, watch the threshold of capital pricing. That is where the actual future is being calculated.